Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Gamilla. I'm the programming director of ImageOut. And thanks for joining us here at ImageOut Virtual Festival. And, um, and thanks for choosing to watch Tahara today. And we have some important people who made this film possible. And we're going to have a conversation with them. And so I'd like to bring in first the director of the film, Olivia Peace.
Hi,
Hi, Olivia. Thanks for joining us today.
happy to be
And I'd
here.
also like to bring in Madeline DeFreece, who is the lead of this movie.
Hello.
Did I cut you off, Olivia, when you were saying hello? I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're
No.
fine.
Okay. and of and of course, the writer of the film, Jess Zeidman, who is from Rochester. So welcome, Jess.
Hello, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I also like to remind everyone that this is our Flower City Spotlight film. It's because of Jess that we have that designation for the film. It's very special to us to always feature films and filmmakers that are associated with Rochester that maybe be made here in Rochester or featuring talents from Rochester. So we're very happy and excited to have someone from Rochester be the writer of this film. So when I watched this film, it occurred to me that it looks really, very indie, and it looks like a labor of love, and that probably took a lot of collaboration to make it happen. So I'm just going to ask probably Olivia and Jess to take us back to how this journey started. Like how did it happen? How did you start working together for the film?
Oh, totally. So I wrote the script in college in a class from another ImageOut alum, filmmaker Stephen Cohn. It was called Writing the Micro Budget Feature. And I edited the script throughout my time at Northwestern, where Olivia also went, though we did not know each other in college. But I'd seen Olivia's work, and me and a fellow producer, Dasha Gorin, were talking about who we would want to direct the film, because I wasn't interested in directing it. I was interested in writing it and producing it. And I thought about films that I'd seen in school, and Olivia's work had always really stood out to me. I thought it was really incredible and really dynamic. And so I reached out to Olivia to see if they would read the script. And they were like, yeah, send it over. And then I sent it to the wrong email address. Like I misspelled it. And so then I was like, okay, it's a pass. That's okay. And then, we were still trying to find someone. No one was really clicking. And Josh was like, let me try Olivia one more time. Got their correct email. Olivia finally read the script, and then I'll let them take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we've now told this story like so many different ways, but like the point when I always can pinpoint where it kind of went from something that I might do to something that I was doing was when I got to the scene with the pimple popping. And when I read that, I had like such a clear vision for how I wanted to shoot it. And so I brought like a bunch of different ideas to Jess. We talked on the phone for a really long time about like how we would want the film potentially to be. And yeah, the rest is history.
So the film is coming from the perspective of a Black queer Jewish teenager. Is that how you wrote it, Jess, or did this come out of your collaboration with Olivia?
That definitely came out of, I was writing for a queer Jewish teenager. And I think it was out of our collaboration that Olivia was like, this needs to be a Black Jewish person. This needs to be a Jewish person of color. And then when we saw Maddie's audition, we were like, that's the one. But yeah, that came out of my collaboration with Olivia for sure.
And well, because it came out of the collaboration, I was wondering, Olivia, how important for you was, to represent that perspective? I mean, because you probably instigated it.
I did instigate that. I mean, I think like some of my background is I did a really cool fellowship program with Sundance, and something that they always really drill into their filmmakers is that you should write and direct what you know. And so what do I know besides like being a Black queer teenager? So it just kind of like naturally flowed out of that. So like what kind of came of it was this really cool collaboration between Jess and I, where we were navigating like these different communities. um, I learned a lot in the process of it, did a ton of research to prepare and during the making of it. And we got super lucky having Maddie on board as one of our leads.
Yeah, so continuing that, because it's such a very different perspective and something that we rarely see on screen, I want to ask Maddie, how did you prepare for the role? And did you feel like a certain responsibility in making sure that your portrayal would be, reflective of that perspective, just because it hasn't really been seen a lot on screen?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I grew up in the church as the only Black person. So that was kind of like my experience. But taking that to another level where you're the only Black person in a Jewish community. I mean, I can't think of anything that I've seen where I've seen that perspective, like being the only Black person in a Jewish community. So part of it was taking like, what do I feel being alienated as the only Black person in this area? And then also kind of exploring my own queer identity and putting that into Carrie and realizing there's so many more levels beyond just what I'm feeling.
Well, you were great. And I was just wondering, how did you feel? Was this your first film? Or
I have done one before, but I don't think any of us will ever see it.
was it a feature film?
It was, but I haven't seen it. It happens. It's a film.
But beyond that, though, there seems to be a lot of hierarchy, social hierarchy that going on in the film. Was that a conscious decision to have all of that happening in the film?
The social hierarchy?
Yeah, I mean, it's for any one of you guys. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I definitely think something Olivia and I worked on as we kind of polished the script before we started filming was, tracing the arcs of all the characters in the film, from someone who had, the most lives, that would be Maddie, or sorry, Maddie, this way, or someone who has only a couple of lines, or if their lines are mostly like expressions of crying or rolling eyes and that sort of thing. So it was really important to me and Olivia to understand how the script would go from like my brain, the page, to the, ultimate direction by like seeing how those arcs flowed. And something that we both understood when we were like looking back on our teenage experiences is like navigating those power dynamics. And that's where I think all the hierarchies come from, is like who feels like they have the power, who feels like they don't, and like playing with those tensions and dynamics. So I think a lot of that,
like where they are versus where they think they should be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was going to ask again, Olivia, you mentioned the zit popping scene, which, I wanted to add, I wanted to add the film to the trailer that we just watched earlier, but we didn't have a trailer for the film yet. All I got was a little clip, a short clip, like I think it was 5 or 6 minutes, and the zit popping scene was in there. So I was telling my videographer, like, I wanna use that. It would just jar people, and then he was just giving me this look, like, really?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The zip pop is not for everyone, but that has to be a major shout out to Claire Schaff, who is a Rochester based makeup artist who made that happen. And Michael, you mentioned that we're part of the Flower City Spotlight, and we're so honored because we made the movie in Rochester with a lot of Rochester cast and crew. And one of them, Claire Schaff of Blush Beauty, ROC, she was game for the zit. I mean, she made it happen.
Well, I mean, you mentioned, Olivia, that was probably a factor in you deciding to take on the script. I mean, what about that scene that stood out to you?
I'm really interested in things that I haven't seen before. And in that moment, it occurred to me that though in real life, I'd seen so many zit popping videos on YouTube. I'd seen so many people picking at their face in a mirror. For some reason, I'd not seen it in a film before. Like I'd never actually seen a zit burst. And so that was kind of like one of the first moments where I was like, here's something new we can do. And like, how much farther can we press it from there? So a lot of this movie is just us like trying to try new things, things that we hadn't seen before on film, from like the aspect ratio to some of the, honestly, like a lot of the directing decisions, some of the dialogue in general. Yeah, we just wanted to experiment and kind of push the medium, and this is what came out of it.
I'm going to go back to the aspect ratio thing in a little bit, but going back to the zit popping scene, for me, it's just more than that, because, the whole time I feel like Hannah, the Rachel character, was trying to just look perfect, because she's trying to seduce this other boy. So to have her be shown with a flaw that is for everyone to see, that was for me was very important. But also, I think the part where she asked Carrie for the concealer. It's like, you're supposed to be friends for a long time. I'm like, do you not realize? I mean, I know that I wouldn't just ask somebody for a concealer because I have to make sure that we have the same color, right? But, so I thought it meant so much about the relationship. So I was wondering if you could just talk about that for a little bit.
I would love to. Yeah, we haven't gotten this question too much, but it's one of my favorite things that we actually added a little bit later on. So initially in the script, the idea was that like both of the actors would be like fair skinned. So the line did make sense. But then in the decision that I really wanted to have an actor of color playing Carrie, the line's meaning shifted quite a bit. And so that was something that we played with a lot in the edit of like trying to make sure that landed properly and that it didn't seem like a mistake. Because the idea is that a lot of times like you can be really good friends with someone, but it was because they were ignoring a part of you, and that sort of ignoring is what allows you to be friends, if that makes sense. So we actually had Maddie like re-record some of that line, I think in your phone at the time, and then send it digitally to my editor Troy and I to just try to like get the tone of it right. So yeah, I'm glad that you noticed that. Thanks for asking.
I try to notice some of the things that most people don't. Plus, they're talking about makeup. How can you not? Just kidding. So you did mention about the aspect ratio earlier, and I think when I was watching it, at some point I noticed, oh, it's a square. I'm like, and I can't remember now if it started, when the car was being driven and Carrie was being dropped off. I can't remember now if it started like wide and then became a square, or if it started as a square. So what is there like an artistic reason for using the square as your aspect ratio?
Yes. That was one of the first ideas that I brought to Jess along with the zip popping was, and I think I've saved it till last. Like I'd actually written it first on the paper, but I figured maybe I should bring it up as the last thing that I mentioned on the call. So kind of like make or break it. And it was something I'd not seen before in an actual film, though I'd seen it a lot on Instagram. And what I'd noticed on Instagram is that in having the frame be so tight, like in that square, you, for one, can't fit more than one person really comfortably in the frame. So it feels a little lonely. Like when you see like each person's single shot. But on top of that, it really narrows in on anything. Like it becomes a very narrow field of vision. So for me, that just really felt like the teenage experience where you're just kind of like boxed out from everyone else, living your own main character life in your own movie. And so things like that zit, especially if we have a slow move in, suddenly feel very, very dramatic and everything becomes very anxiety inducing. So yeah, and then kind of like later on, we added that opening sequence with the rotating square that like turns into a box.
Yeah. Was there, and I can't remember this, and I usually try to pay attention, but was there ever a scene that it became wide and came back to? So I was trying to watch my screen. I was trying to locate that scene and I couldn't because I was just fast forwarding. It's like, I'm pretty sure there was a widening shot and then it went back to square. Can you talk about that also?
Yeah, so the two times that it widens out, actually, no, it widens out every time that there's animation. So in all, I think there's four,
Yeah, I
if I'm
think
not
there's
mistaken.
4. Yeah.
But it's just to kind of mimic the feeling of like when you go into your internal imaginary life. So it goes from this very constricted space into widening out. And then there's Hannah's imagination of how this is going to go. And then there's Carrie's imagination of how it's going to go.
But well, you mentioned the animation. Was that part of the plan all along to have the claymation included in the film? And I can't remember. Is it like the fantasy in Carrie's head that happens whenever the claymation happens?
Yeah. So Carrie got the sort of clay puppets, that more three-dimensional, goofy style. And then Hannah's imagination style is the more flat, psychedelic, rotoscoped animation. But all along, yeah, our plan was to have at least two different styles of animation, one for each person. And then our animator, Emily Ann Hoffman, helped to sort of like massage out exactly what that would look like. And then we got pictures of Madeline and Rachel. I think like, did we have you like turn around or something? But
No, we sat, I think it was like 15 minutes. We just sat like this. And then you
there's
guys was around us for like 15 minutes. This was like day 2 of filming. We had just met.
Yeah.
I thought
for the kids.
maybe they put you on like one of those revolving thing and turned you around because
that would have been good.
Yeah. Yeah. We were in a really tight space. So this, it's filmed where it's set, which is Temple Bethel in Rochester, and we are in the actual like ladies' lounge of Temple Bethel, which is a very narrow space, and so we couldn't really do the full 360. So Tahila DeCastro and our first AC, Ashley O'Shea, got us like part of the way there, both directions, and they like rotated the camera on like a trash can bottom.
I know exactly what you're talking about, not the ladies' room, because we hold a few of our events at Temple Bethel. So, as soon as I saw the shots, I'm like, oh, I've been there. So, which is probably a nice segue to, you started talking about shooting in Rochester and involving the Western New York filmmaking community. How did that work out for you guys? And for Maddie also, how is it, having to travel to to Rochester for your first big film. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the role of Rochester in making of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was so excited. I was so excited. I'm like, I get to be on a plane. I get to go away for a month out of the city and shoot a movie. Oh, like, hello, Hollywood. But I loved Rochester. I mean, you said earlier that like this film was such a labor of love. I mean, that's what it felt like the whole time. And then just being in Jess's community and like being in like where Jess came from and just really being in that mind. It was just absolutely wonderful. Absolutely beautiful.
And was it easy for Olivia and Jess to reach out to the community to help you guys out?
Yeah, I think so. Olivia can speak to this, but Olivia went and spoke to a bunch of Rochester Institute of Technology film students. And it was, I mean, I mostly, used the connections I had from growing up and attending Temple Bethel. I posted in my high school Facebook group for extras, and some of them came, which was, thank you for that. And yeah, there's a huge filmmaking community in Rochester, and we were so lucky to have worked with them.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, when someone asked me actually if I knew of this queer film that was shot in Rochester, and it's about a Black teenager, I'm like, I thought I was very well connected in the art scene of Rochester. I have not heard of this film, no. And so I had to research, like, when did it happen? And then I guess I saw a post from the Little Theater asking for extras or something. It's like, how did I miss all this? So anyway, but in connection to that, how important for you, Jess, to shoot? This is your first produced film, right?
Mm-hmm.
How important is it for you to have your first produced film to be in Rochester? And was that a plan anyway?
I think such a big part of it is I always wanted it to be in Rochester. I think I have coming from Northwestern and meeting Chicago filmmakers and hearing how excited they were to be like working and making art in Chicago where they had grown up. I was like, wow, what if I did that in Rochester where I grew up? So I was very much like, maybe we could make that happen. And then, going down when the film is written set at Bethel, and I didn't really know if that would be possible or not, but Debbie Zager, the executive director there, was like, go for it, let's try it. I was like, let's do it. I think it'll be, it's not the easiest thing in the world, because we had to fly people in, we had to make people comfortable, we had to introduce everyone to a new community, try to work with the community that's already there. But it meant a lot to me that everyone really rolled with it, and I think really thrived in that sort of energy. So that was very exciting to me. I think there's so much we can do when it comes to independent film. And like Olivia said earlier, we were really trying new things all the time. So it was really exciting that everyone was like, okay, let's try to make a feature in Rochester. Especially because the location was so important that it was like, okay, let's go for it.
Yeah, we have for the festival, of course, I've had a lot of guest filmmakers here and directors come to attend the festival and talk about their films. And I would give them a tour around the city, and they would be like, oh my God, there's some really cool spots in the city, and they could actually see doing a movie. And I keep saying, "Oh, come back! We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen. I'll try to connect you." But so it's always great to see when people make it happen, like you, Jess, working with Olivia and bringing the film here. My next question is, I know it opened with the scene, a grief counseling scene, and I didn't really catch this until later that the classmate that died, or the friend from the Hebrew school that died, committed suicide because she's queer. or maybe is it? I mean, I read somewhere that she's a queer teenager. Again, was that a conscious decision to make it about a queer teen committing suicide, possibly for other? I don't know what the reasons were, if it was bullying or what. But can you just talk about that for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Olivia, do you want me to, or?
You can start and then I'll pick up.
Okay, sounds good. I think such a big part of that, Samantha Goldstein, that's the character they're talking about. So much of that situation is the unknown about it. So I think the film doesn't try to answer that question of the why she did it. I think that is such a complicated thing to, interrogate, and to like put a clean label on it, I think is not what we were trying to do with the film, at least not what I was trying to do with the film. I think it's more about how people process their grief and how they look for the answers. So I think people are like, oh, maybe the reason is this, or maybe the reason is that. And I think her queer identity to some is like, that's how they connected the dots. But I think to others, they're like, it's another reason entirely. And I think more we were trying to explore how people try to question something that's not really like theirs to question.
Yeah, I mean, something even that we ended up cutting out of the film was initially we were going to animate a ghost of Samantha. That would be in the film almost like as a present force. But what we realized in the edit is that we didn't need that. Like Samantha was already really present in the stories that people were telling about her, about what they knew of her, which is not very much, actually. And as time goes on, you start noticing that people are saying kind of the same things over and over again of, oh, she seemed to really like horses or something, maybe yarn, like, but yeah, like something I think that people were, especially I think as a queer teenager, like you are constantly trying to clock kin, literally, like, okay, so I think I'm starting to feel this way. Who around me or who in the media do I know who might have a similar connection to queerness? And if the first person you know is someone who committed suicide, like how would that make you feel? So I think that's kind of more the vantage point we were trying to go with versus that specifically Samantha committed suicide because she was queer. It's more about, I guess, Carrie's understanding.
And for Maddie, just we talked about Rachel, the actress Rachel Sennott, who played Hannah. How was it working with her? Because I feel like there's another movie that we're screening later in the festival. It's called Shiva Baby, and when I was watching, it's like I've seen her before. Where have I seen her? It's like, oh right, she's in Tahara, and so how was it working with her? It seems like she has like cornered the the angst of Jewish teenager, like a slutty one and all that for this year.
Yeah, Rachel is so great. She's so great. We met at our costume fitting the day before we started shooting. And I love telling the story. We were like, okay, so we have to be best friends tomorrow. Okay, so let's go grab dinner and get to know each other. And so then like the next day we showed up and we just became friends as we were shooting. So that friendship that you see kind of going through its ups and downs on camera, we're just becoming friends this entire time in real life. Rachel's so funny. She's a fantastic scene partner, and I had such an amazing time with her.
I also wanted to ask, and I think in the film, all the girls wore skirt, but not you. Was that a decision that you suggested, or was it Olivia's or Jess?
I think Olivia, was it? I remember at her fitting, you were like, I think Carrie's wearing pants like that don't really fit her that well. And she doesn't know what to wear, and she's gonna wear a weird fuzzy sweater.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really fun collaboration. I think like each actor collaborated with Avery, our costume designer, really, really well, where we kind of like tried some things on and saw how they were fitting. But ultimately, the idea we had of Carrie was that this is someone who's going to eventually have a really cool sense of style. But right now, like her mom shops at the J.C. Penney, and and so she's kind of like doing the best of what she has based on that. But then on top of this, we had this idea of, for all these young people, this is the first funeral that they've been to. So it's not like they can just kind of pop something out of their wardrobe. It would be clothing that's meant for something else. So Carrie's costume is like, all right, I've got to find something black. I have gray pants. That's kind of close enough. And then she's wearing gym shoes. Yeah.
Tie-dye socks. Ooh.
You know, and then Hannah's is like a literal homecoming dress. So, yeah.
The other question I have, which escapes me at the moment, was, the title. I was looking it up. Oh, what does it mean? And I saw that it's about the cleansing of the body as it's getting prepared for burial. And I know that the film is rich in its themes of race and religion and identity, and also mourning. So, what did that title mean to you, Tahara, and why did you decide to use it?
So what's interesting is Olivia actually came to me with that title. So originally the script was called Tahrihim, which is another ritual, which is it's the wrapping of the body in a plain white cloth, which is supposed to be like a part of identity erasure. But before that is the Tahara, the cleansing of the body. And Olivia actually came to me with that title because Tahrihim, a little bit more complicated, a little harder to spell, a little harder to say. So we went with, the ritual right before, and I think it actually took on like a multiplicity of meaning as we worked on the film, from script to production to post, of the idea of like, how do you cleanse yourself? What is it like to like come into a new form of identity? That's what I think of, for me at least.
Do you have anything to add, Olivia? Because it seems like you were part of that decision also. So
yeah, I mean, I guess I'll shout out my roommate. My roommate actually is the person who came up with the idea for the name. Because I was kind of describing like how important I felt it was to stick with a name that's in Hebrew, but maybe like try to maybe find something that was a little bit easier to search so that people can find our movie, because I'd already had a movie called Pangea and it was called Panga in the press. So make it just like a little bit easier, I guess, for people to search it without like forsaking the cultural context that the entire film is set in. So shout out to Ethan for that.
And for my part, I'm like, I'm originally from the Philippines, so I read things differently anyway. And so I'm like, I'm sure there's a correct way of pronouncing the word. And I don't want to be embarrassed when I see my Jewish friends again and the people from the community. I'm like, I have to say this right. Because when I listen to some of the other people, it's of course Americanized, like Tahara or Tahara. So I'm like, and just last week, one guy who I know is from Israel and he speaks Hebrew. So I'm like, how do you pronounce this? So I'm like, oh, okay, good. Now I can confidently say it, but I won't say it because I might make a mistake. You already said it earlier. So
you have been saying it correctly this whole time. I will say to anyone out there, it's similar to the word like in English, like Hillel, like people say it differently based on region and accent in American dialogue. So like we say Tahara, but if you're saying Tahara, you're also correct. There's no reason for everyone to feel like they can't say the name of the movie. I say it, post it, have fun with it.
So I have this question for you guys, for all of you. Um, when you set out to make the movie, of course, you have an idea of what the movie would be. Now that it's out there, is this the movie that you thought you would make? And is this the movie for Maddie? Is this the movie that you thought you'd be involved in?
Oh, I knew that I was a part of something absolutely wonderful, like from the jump, from the jump. Funny story, Rachel and I didn't know that it was in 1-1 until we saw it for the first time. We were like, oh, like cool. But that's the only thing that I was like, oh, had no idea. Cool, figuring this out now. But it spoke volumes from the very beginning, and just the fact that it's out there for so many people to see and really inspire people. It's absolutely everything that I thought it would be.
Wow.
And yeah, for Jess and Olivia.
I'll let Olivia finish it. I'll go next. It's definitely like exceeded every expectation since I've written it. It's only gotten better and better the more people who have been involved with it. And I think similarly to what Maddie said, like all the love we've gotten from festival programmers and people who've seen the film has really meant the world to me. It's just exciting that people are taking the time, especially now, to watch it and interact with it and like feel their way through it. So yeah, that has been like, I think obviously some people make movies so people can see them, but I think I never wrapped my head around that until like really this last month, where I'm like, oh, people are seeing this. Like people are going out of their way to like figure out how to watch it. And that really means the world to me. I mean, it's exciting to be like, we made a movie that people who maybe know us personally or maybe don't are like willing to spend some time with.
Yeah, I mean, also just what a good question. That one I really did have to think about because it has changed so much, I think, from like the script to even just a pitch deck that I made initially to, you know, once we cast people, everything was changing too. Getting the costuming in, like editing, animation. And I think ultimately we were really trying to nail a feeling really well, like all along. And I think we got it. Like, this is a kind of uncomfortable film to watch. Like, there are so many times where even I will have to pause because I'm getting too embarrassed, like watching my own actors. Like Maddie, you are so good at just like really living through your face, I think. To where even now I've seen this film like too many times, but I'm feeling for you every single time. And now, like, as more and more elements are coming together with like sound and color, like these kind of finishing touches to sort of sync everything together, I think it's just gotten stronger over time.
So my other question, of course, you made this film last spring, I think. Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, not last, because we didn't have a spring this year, but
Oh,
2019
yeah.
spring.
What month was
That
it?
part.
We didn't have anything this year at all. Well, which leads me to this question: like, you made it then before the pandemic, and then when it's finally ready and you wanted to share it with the world, and suddenly all the theaters are closed. How did you feel about that? And did that change your plans at all? Because, well, I know it's probably great for films to participate in film festivals. That is my opinion anyway, because it's like your marketing tool. But and we're still not out of the pandemic, and who knows what's going to happen. But how did that affect your feelings towards getting this film out there for people to see now that the theaters are closed?
Well, we were really lucky to premiere at Slam Dance back in January, and we got to do that in person.
Oh, well, at least you had to have an event. You got to have an event.
Exactly one. Yeah. I think ultimately, I think that was pretty rough, to be honest, like in the beginning. We were pretty worried, but ultimately our goal is that our target audience can see it, which is like teens, especially queer teens. And I think a lot of people will be able to hopefully see it online is where I'm going with this. Like I think having online screenings actually might make things more accessible in the future and going forward. So it was kind of a rough transition, I think, at first because none of us saw this coming. But I think hopefully this will lead to just getting more films out in front of more people who they're intended for.
Yeah, and for our part, this is part of our youth series that we call Next Generation series. So we offer it for free to people under 25, or we reach out to the GSAs in high schools and colleges. So like you said, we need people to see these films because it's made for them. It was made for them, and we want to make sure that they speak to the people that they need to speak to the films. So that's what we did. So my last question, because I don't want to waste any more of your time. How, probably for you, Jess, as a closer, how important was it for you to bring this film to Rochester as a finished product? And we're just happy to do it for you. And
I mean, I'm so thrilled. I'm so, obviously sad we can't all be there in person. Like I was hoping to like get everybody back out there, have everyone stay at my parents' house again, kind of take us all to the Little and have a good time. But I'm so thrilled to be that we are all part of this virtual festival, and ImageOut is such an amazing event. And the fact that our film is co-presented with the Jewish Film Festival in Rochester means a lot to me. I'm hoping, I think it's both like I'm excited for Rochester audiences to see it. And then my other hope is that they like it so much that when it's safe, we can play it again in a big, I would love to do something at Bethel. I would love to do something at the Little. I would love to do something anywhere, at RIT, wherever, and come back and have the cast and crew, if they're available. Hopefully they will all be working big jobs that pay them a lot more than we could. But maybe if they have some time in their busy schedules to like get back to Rochester and have a sort of reunion, whether that's, in a couple of years. And I don't know, I obviously can't give a timeline. I don't know more than anyone does, but it means the world to me. I mean, if I were the teenager that I, wrote about in living at home right now, I would be so happy to be able to see something like this. And I hope one day we can make an in-person event and just connect all these people. And I want to see all the Rochester, Western New York folks we worked with. I'll stop, but it means the world.
Well, thank you. And I know Brian, who's I think he's your distributor. I don't know if he's a sales agent, but I know Brian from the beginning, and he was telling Brian Glick, and he's been telling me, oh, I have this film from Rochester, and you have to play it, and you have to like make it like a special event, and blah blah blah. And I said, well, I guess I can't do that anymore, Brian. We can't have any red carpet thing out because we just can't. But I'll be happy to bring it to Rochester and feature it as our Flower City spotlight, and he was just happy with that. So anyway, again, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to the people who are watching for choosing to watch Tahara in our virtual festival. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Maddie, and thank you, Jess. Any last words before we go?
I was just going to say, if you are a teen and you like the movie, feel free to hit us up. Those messages mean so much to us. Find us on Instagram. We love saying hi and hearing what you think.
What Olivia said.
Agreed twice over. Our movie has an Instagram, and feel free to DM any of us on Instagram. We will definitely reply to you.
Yeah. And that's the thing about this virtual festival. It could reach so much more people than showing it in the theater. And we're showing this for 4 days. So hopefully people who see it can tell other people that they need to watch it. So we're happy about that development. And I'd also like to thank the Jewish Federation of Greater Rochester for being the sponsor of this film and making it happen that we could bring the film to the festival. So thank you for that. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, the JCC Jewish Film Festival, who always partners with us on when we show Jewish films. And it's funny because it's usually not easy to find Jewish feature films, non-documentary, to bring to a queer film festival. But this year I have 4. I feel like I'm having a mini Jewish film festival within ImageOut. Anyway, so
it's trendy.
I know. So I hope you guys check out those other films. But anyway, thank you again so much for being part of ImageOut. And hopefully we'll get to see you sometime when you bring a physical screening of the film to Rochester. We'll definitely partner with you, ImageOut.
Amazing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.